Good morning, everyone. Well, it's good to be back at school. Maybe. Take them off so I can read. Some things change. So, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is my delightful task to introduce you to Grant Ferris, a longtime friend and associate as an inductee into the King City Secondary School Case of Distinction. The Royal Society of Canada was founded in 1882 and comprises the Academies of Arts, Humanities, and Science of Canada. Its mission is to recognize scholarly, research, and artistic excellence, to advise governments and organizations, and to promote a culture of knowledge and innovation in Canada. Election to the Academies of the Royal Society of Canada is the highest honor a scholar can achieve. In November of 2012, Professor Grant Ferris was elected to this elite group of distinguished Canadians. I quote from the official press release, and some of these words are a little big for me, so bear with me. The transformative work of Professor Grant Ferris, notable for its depth, breadth, interdisciplinary nature, and fundamental role in defining the new discipline of microbial geochemistry, has made him one of the world's premier scientists. Exploring problems at the interface between the biological and physical sciences, he has established a profound new understanding of the pervasive importance of microbial activity throughout the Earth's diverse environments. He is credited with the discovery and development of a range of novel contributions to a discipline. Not bad for somebody who wanted to be a vet. Grant and I first attended school together at a two-room school, Strange Public School, in grade 3. From there, we would part ways, and he would go to Kinghorn School, and I on to Pottersville and Schomberg. But we would meet up again at the brand new Nobleton Senior Public. Speaking of Kinghorn, you know you're old, Grant, when your old schools become a museum. Grant and I would share the long high school ride. When we came to high school, the long bus ride for 5 years up Weston Road to the Aurora Road, over the 8th and around, and across the King Road to the KCSS. How many of you in this room remember the bus jump over the railway tracks when we came into King? Yes, things have changed a bit in King City and continue to do so. And I'm feeling particularly connected today because we also shared that bus ride for 3 years with fellow inductee Dorothy Engelman. And Grant was reminding me about our bus, and we had a fun bus because we would decorate for Halloween, we'd decorate for Christmas, and we did mention something about a bottle of rye, but we can't do that now. So they were fun times on the bus, and it was a long bus ride, so we really got to know our busmates. So it was pretty cool, Dorothy, that you showed up on this as well. It's kind of karma. I will let Grant tell you a lot more about his high school days, but I do know that he played some football, and there were some parties. There was a lot of friendships, but I know that he was also a very good student, and he worked hard because his goal was to be a veterinary, to gain admittance in the Ontario Veterinary College. It was his dream, and an 80% average was kind of the minimum to get into biosci and put him on that road. Not really having a farm background, he spent his summers learning as much as he could about animals and farming, doing work at the Strathy farms who were friends of his, and also at the Hoover farms, throwing a lot of bales, I believe, Grant, a lot of bales. We use round ones now when we use a tractor. It's a lot easier. Grant would get accepted to the College of Biological Sciences at the University of Guelph, along with our good friend Kim Hopkins, and I would get accepted to agricultural science. Kim and Grant wanted to room together in residence, and I think they applied to South Residence, Lambton, and numerous others. But I was so excited about getting accepted to Guelph because, you know what, I probably eked in by the skin of my teeth, and it was kind of a new thing for our family to send someone to university, that I sent my application in like the day I got it, and I wrote in residence, roommates, Grant Ferris, Kim Hopkins, and to the iconic Johnson Hall. Grant and Kim were more than a little puzzled because they had not put down that they wanted to be in a triple in Johnson. This may have been one of the smartest moves I ever made, because I actually got to learn from Grant, because his study habits from the beginning and his organizational abilities were really apparent. And I don't know whether I would have got through without you, Grant, in terms of those first few years. It's not an easy thing going to university, and you got me through that. The bonus was that he had a killer stereo system. He had every Beatles album, every Eagles album, Fleetwood Mac. Our room was the rockin' place to go. And they were vinyl. Wouldn't you love to have them wrapped now? Now, initially, Grant and Kim were not so excited to have their hick farmer roommate, but the story would evolve, and we would meet many, many friendly people who have become lifelong friends, and it was all a good thing. It wasn't always easy for Grant. The numerous attempts to gain interview for a vet college fizzled, and Grant, I remember being very frustrated. Money didn't come very easily, and I remember him scraping together nickels and dimes so we could go to the bookstore. But while working hard to improve his marks, Grant would find a new passion, microbiology. I can remember overhearing the conversations Grant and Kim and another roommate of ours, John Laverty, had, and talking about a Professor T.J. Beveridge and his passion for his work. This connection would lead Grant to pursue graduate work under Professor Beveridge, who just happens to be one of the world's leading electron microscopists and a Royal Society Fellow. Grant would complete his doctorate in 1985 and be awarded a scholarship from NASA to study at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography in California. He would return to Canada on a fellowship from the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council and join the Department of Geology at Western University. In 1988, after looking like he was going to be a lifer at university, Grant moved into the private sector, heading west to Calgary to work on a pipeline corrosion, enhanced oil recovery, and the cleaning of refinery waste projects. In 1991, he would return to his roots in the university world as a professor at the Department of Earth Sciences at the U of T. He would establish one of the first microbial geochemistry laboratories in Canada. It's funny how things come full circle, but Grant's mom Audrey was a graduate of U of T and studied at the conservative music, as well as playing varsity basketball there. And I know she would be very, very proud of you, Grant. Professor Ferris has been a teacher and a mentor for many graduate students and postdoctoral fellows, and he is quick to share his accomplishments of the microgeochemistry lab with them. But every great team needs a great leader, and Grant's quiet, unassuming way and his dry sense of humor, I am sure, are behind much of what they have achieved. Study sites for his lab include some of the Earth's most extreme environments, including the Atacama Desert in Chile, the depths of the North Pacific, hydrothermal fields in Yellowstone Park, geysers in Iceland and New Zealand, underground nuclear waste sites in Sweden, Ellesmere Island in the Canadian High Arctic, and the blood-red waters of the Rio Tinto in Spain. Grant has always been a prolific writer, and his ability to make something sound really simple sound incredibly complicated is astounding. Seriously, he has served as editor for several world-renowned scientific journals and has held executive positions with the American Society for Microbiology and the International Society for Environmental Biochemistry. He is a founding member of the this is the really neat part, of the Astrobiology Working Group of the Canadian Space Agency, and was the only non-American on the committee assessment of planetary protection requirements for Mars sample return. He might get to play with the Mars rocks. Truly out of this world. Grant has 2 children, Dylan and Anae, and he is joined here by his sisters, Dale and Kim. He has another sister, Tammy, and a brother, Ken. On the way over, I was listening to Q107, and they were playing a special on John Lennon, and John's a big Beatles fan. And it made me think of a song that I think really fits here. The long winding road that leads to your door will never disappear. I've seen that road before. It always leads me here, leads me to your door. John Winston Lennon, Paul James McCartney. In his submission, Grant quotes Sir Isaac Newton, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. For someone who's about 6'4" or 5", I'm thinking giants. I think that what you've heard today, that we can say that, Grant, you have become one of those giants. You've always been one of those giants to me, I know. And the world is a better place because of you and your work. And we were proud, so very proud to call you a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend Grant Ferris to the KCSS.
As long as Larry. Okay. To tell you the truth, I wasn't expecting quite as glowing an introduction. And it takes a lot of steam out of my sails, to tell you the truth. But maybe that's good, because what I need to do now is share some of the truths behind all the glowing stuff that Larry has been telling you about my career. I think one of the first things to begin with is this idea of me heading out of school here with the idea of becoming a veterinarian. Well, that was a rough idea, and to tell you the truth, after first year of university, it was an even rougher idea. It wasn't that the interviews didn't go well, quite frankly. I didn't get any interviews. My marks were too low after the first year. That was perhaps eye-opening, because it brought me to a bit of a crisis in everything. And Larry rightly pointed out that I ended up in microbiology. And to tell you the truth, that was an accident. It was an accident because I didn't get into veterinary school. I needed to do something, and I really wasn't too sure. And talking to some other people in our Johnson Hall residence, they suggested I should consider microbiology as a major, partly because it had ties to the medical world and so on. And I thought, that sounds good. And they said, besides, microbiology is fun. Didn't say anything about it being interesting or that it was going to make me rich. It's fun. I said, okay, well, I guess if I can't be a vet, I'll be a microbiologist. Well, that turned out pretty good. And I did meet Terry Beveridge at that point in time, a member of the Royal Society of Canada. So he was a brilliant mentor. He taught me a lot about how to do research and so on. And I did stay on and complete my PhD with Terry. Afterwards, I did head down to California to work at Scripps Institute of Oceanography on a Nassau scholarship, where I learned a very important lesson. This is California for you, is that there's no life east of I-5. This is down to San Diego. I-5 is about 1 mile from the coast. So you get the idea, right? Beaches, life, east of I-5, nothing. So that was an enjoyable time. Beach parties and so on. But it was also a bit of an eye-opener for me, because while I was there, I connected with some people that were actually working in oceanography and microbiology in the oceans, hydrothermal vents. And that got me thinking in a slightly different way about what microbiology was all about. And so off I went on an NSERC postdoctorate fellowship to Western, coming back to Canada, which made me very happy. To tell you the truth, I was quite sad initially to have to leave the country. That scholarship to the United States was the first scholarship I'd ever received. But coming back to Canada was great, and I lucked out even more when I returned, because I got to work with Professor Bill Fife at the University of Western Ontario, a member of the Royal Society of Canada, and a member of the Order of Canada. So between Terry and Bill, I was working with some of the most brilliant minds in this country. And that got me started down quite an interesting path, working at this interface between geology and microbiology. And it was great. I loved it. I started traveling all over the world, which was another key ingredient for me. I love traveling. And indeed, as Larry was saying, my job has taken me to wonderful and weird places. But in the end, when it came to try to find a job, so this is around 1988, the academic world wasn't ready for me. And I couldn't find a job anywhere. And I was really worried. But I did manage, through a connection of Terry Beveridge, to get a lead on a spot out west. And that's when I went and did a couple of years of penance in the oil patch. Everybody should do that. And then you can finally understand what the heck they're talking about, all the things that go on out west. But at any rate, finally, some people decided that what microorganisms are doing in a geochemical sense was an important topic. And I think what gave a lot of credence to that was, people remember James Lovelock's book, The Gaia Hypothesis? All about the interactions between life, the biosphere, and sort of feedback mechanisms controlling the global environment. That got to be a big topic, especially long as issues of climate change started to show up. And so I got in on that bandwagon and managed to get in at the University of Toronto in the Department of Geology. It's now Department of Earth Sciences, but at the time it was geology. And I have to admit, I feel really sorry for all the students that I've taught there. You know, professor in the geology department, and I have to confess, and I do tell them this, I said, you know, you're a professor here, I'm teaching you geological mapping and all about geological structures and so on, hydrogeology, and guess what? I haven't taken a formal geology course in my entire life. At any rate, the research has gone well, the teaching has gone well, and what's the story really behind all of this? Really 2 points, I think. Number one is that if you're doing something you enjoy, you will succeed. It's a very simple sort of rule. The second one, and this comes back to some things that we heard very early on from Todd about what being here at KCSS brings to the students. And that is just having some determination, learning about being determined, and some perseverance. And that's really, I think, one of the greatest things I learned and took away, and it served me well through my entire career. And I'll be forever grateful for that. So thank you to all of my former students, all of my former teachers here who've managed to make my career so wonderful. Thanks.